Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tale, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. Parents arranged a housewarming party. "All about you!" they cheered. But every guest was invited by my sister, including my ex-boss who fired me. "It's a small world," my dad chuckled. I told everyone the real reason I was fired. "Silence me is..." "That Leo?" "Oh, my sister." "Oh, you know him. Small world." Dad laughs. "Didn't expect to see your old boss here, huh?" Me. "No, but I think it's time everyone hears why I don't work for him anymore." What was supposed to be a simple housewarming party thrown by my well-meaning but nosy parents turned into one of the most emotionally raw moments of my life. I had just started piecing things back together after being fired for reporting harm at work. I hadn't even finished unpacking when my parents and sister took over and planned a party to lift my spirits. What they didn't tell me was that they'd invited a bunch of people I didn't know, including the man who was responsible for one of the lowest points of my life. After living in Boston for over a decade, I moved back to Albany, New York, and I'm a bit of a haze. It wasn't by choice. I didn't come home victorious or with a big promotion, or even with a clear next step. I came home because I had nowhere else to go. I had lost my job, my confidence, and almost my sense of self. And I was tired. In Boston, I worked for a prestigious consulting firm in the Seaport District. It was the kind of job people gushed over at dinner parties, open concept office, kombucha on tap, overpriced rooftop bar hangouts. And for the first few years, I loved it. I felt seen, valued. I worked hard, rose fast. My title meant something, so did my income, until it didn't. A new senior manager named Kai was hired above me, and everything changed. He was charming. On the surface, said all the right things to the execs. But underneath, he was condescending, manipulative, and at times, uncomfortably personal. He'd make comments about my clothes being distracting or say things like, "You're not smiling today. That's not like you." At first, I brushed it off. Then he started calling me late at night to talk strategy. He began making jokes that weren't jokes. It escalated. I documented everything. I saved texts, emails, call logs. When I finally went to HR, I felt nervous, but righteous. Like I was doing the right thing, even though I knew what could happen. 3 weeks later, I was let go during a departmental restructure. Except my department didn't change. Just me. The man who told me I was being fired? Daman Roar, director of operations. Cool, calculated, always with that thin smile that made you feel like he knew something you didn't. He used phrases like, "We're shifting priorities and it's not personal," but it was very personal. So when I packed my things and left Boston, tail between my legs, I didn't tell my family the full story. I told them the company downsized. They bought it, or pretended to. My mom, Nina, told me to come home. My dad, Ezra, offered to co-sign if I wanted to buy something small in Albany. I found a dated little ranch house near my old high school. Carpet in the kitchen, water damage in the ceiling. It smelled like old baseboard heat and mothballs. But it was mine. 6 weeks in, I was still living out of boxes, still waking up, in cold sweats from dreams about being cornered in a conference room, still figuring out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And that's when my parents announced they were throwing me a housewarming party. "It's just a little get-together," my mom said. "Nothing fancy. Friends, family, some neighbors." "I really don't want..." "Oh, nonsense!" She cut me off. "You need something good. You've been through a lot." I was too tired to argue. My sister, Jace, ever the extrovert, jumped in. "Don't worry. I'll take care of the guest list. Just tell me who not to invite." I didn't even respond. I just assumed she'd keep it small. I assumed wrong. The day of the party came faster than I expected. I spent the morning wiping down kitchen counters and arranging mismatched furniture to look deliberate. I even hung 2 pieces of art to make the place look less temporary. At 3 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to a small crowd, some familiar faces, some not. My childhood piano teacher, Mrs. Altman, gave me a hug and told me I looked less pale. A few cousins I hadn't seen since my uncle's funeral drifted in. Then more people, my dad's old friend from his hardware store days, someone who claimed we went to high school together, some folks Jace knew from work, and then him, Leo, standing in my kitchen like he belonged there, chatting with my sister near the snack table. I stood frozen for a second. Then I walked straight into the hallway, pulled Jace aside. "What is Leo doing here?" Her face lit up, like she didn't register my expression. "You know Leo, small world, right?" "No, that's my old boss, the one who fired me." She blinked, taken aback for the first time. "Wait, that's the guy?" "Yes," I hissed. "The guy who fired me after I reported his buddy for harassment." She winced. "Oh, I didn't know." "Maybe you would have if you asked." I left her standing there, mouth slightly open, and went to the back porch. I needed air. My dad came out a few minutes later, holding 2 beers. "You all right?" "No." He handed me a bottle, then said, "Didn't expect to see your old boss here, huh?" "Yeah, thanks for that." He shrugged. "Jay said he was just a contact. Didn't realize there was bad blood." I didn't respond. He left me alone after that. But as more people arrived, I started feeling watched, like my life was being narrated by others, shaped into a comeback story that wasn't mine. I hadn't come back stronger. I had come back because I had no other option, and that's when it happened. Inside, the party felt like a performance I hadn't agreed to star in. People mingled, laughed, sipped wine, complimented the curtains I hadn't even chosen, leftovers from the previous owner. There were compliments about how brave I was to buy a house on my own. More than once, someone said, "Starting over, huh? Good for you." I just nodded, smiled tight, pretended. Every time I caught sight of Leo, my stomach twisted. He didn't seem the least bit uncomfortable, just sipping a drink, engaging in small talk with people who didn't know what he'd done. Or maybe he assumed I hadn't told anyone, so it didn't matter. Jace didn't come near me after that. Brief hallway exchange. I imagine she was avoiding the confrontation, playing hostess to distract herself. My parents had no idea what was simmering under the surface. They floated from group to group, beaming proudly, as if this was their victory, too. At some point, someone clinked a fork against a glass. I turned to see my mom holding up a wine glass, smiling wide. "Everyone, I just want to say a few words." "Oh God, no," she continued, completely unaware. "We're so proud of Arya. This house represents strength, resilience, and a new beginning. She's been through a rough patch, but she's landed on her feet like she always does." There was applause. Someone whistled. A few people raised their drinks in my direction. I just stood there, locked in place. Mom wasn't finished. And special thanks to Jace for organizing all this. She's always looking out for her big sister. More applause. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped forward slowly, not dramatic. I didn't clink a glass or raise my voice. I just started speaking. "I appreciate the kind words," I said. "But since you're all here, there's something I think I should clarify." The room quieted. People turned, expecting another feel-good speech, probably something about gratitude. I didn't move back to Albany because I missed it. I moved back because I lost my job. And not because I was downsized, or because I wanted a change. I could feel my heart pounding. I was fired after I reported a senior manager for harassment, someone who made my work life unbearable. He dragged it out for weeks, then let me go with some vague excuse. The man who delivered that news, who sat across from me with a smile and told me, "It's not personal," is here at this party. I looked directly at Leo. He didn't smile this time. He didn't say a word. I didn't know he'd be invited. I wasn't asked, and it honestly makes me sick that I've been pretending everything's okay when it's not. No one moved. I swallowed. My voice felt steadier now, but my hands were still trembling. I wasn't resilient. I was wrecked. I lost more than a job. I lost faith in the system that's supposed to protect people like me. And tonight, Seeing him here in my house has reminded me just how much that still hurts. I stopped, not because I ran out of things to say, but because there was nothing more to explain. A thick silence hung over the room. My mom looked horrified. Dad looked stunned. I couldn't even look at her. Someone in the back cleared their throat, but no one said anything. I turned around and walked back to the porch. The air outside was thick and cool now, and the porch, light buzzed faintly. I sat down on the top step and stared out into the small, dimly lit backyard. There were still dandelions along the fence line, little weeds I hadn't gotten around to pulling. Behind me, I could hear the party slowly start to thin out. The hum of conversation didn't resume. There were only shuffles, murmurs, a few apologies offered in whispers. None directed at me. I heard the door creak open a few minutes later, but didn't turn. Soft footsteps. Then, my mom's voice. "I didn't know, Arya." I still didn't look at her. "I thought you got laid off. That's what you said." "But you said." I didn't want to explain it. She exhaled slowly, then sat down beside me. "You should have told us." "Would it have changed anything?" I didn't answer. She didn't either. A moment later, Dad came out too. No words, just handed me a folded lawn chair cushion and sat beside me on the other side. That was his way of showing up. We sat like that for a while, not speaking, just listening to the wind and the occasional car passing by on the street. Eventually, the porch door opened again. "Jace." Her shoes clicked against the wood. She didn't sit, just stood a few feet behind me. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice sounded smaller than usual. I turned slightly. I didn't know he was that guy. I really didn't. "You didn't ask," I said. "I should have. I was just trying to make it feel like things were normal again." "Normal doesn't mean anything anymore," I said. "And pretending doesn't help." Jace didn't argue, just nodded. "Do you want me to tell him to leave?" she asked. "He's already gone," I replied. She looked surprised, then nodded again. "I guess I'll go too." She turned to leave. "Jace," she paused. "You should have asked." "I know," she said without looking back. And then the door closed behind her. The night wore on quietly. After my sister left, the house began to exhale. I heard the murmur of a few lingering voices inside, polite goodbyes, chair legs dragging across hardwood, the creak of the front door opening and closing. But mostly, it was silent. No more clinking glasses, no forced laughter. The storm had passed, but it left behind a different kind of noise. That thick, invisible weight that fills the air after people have heard something uncomfortable and don't know what to do with it. Eventually, I got up from the porch and went back inside. The place was mostly empty now. A few guests had left, dishes on the kitchen island. There was a half-eaten lemon bar melting into a napkin. Someone had dropped a grape on the rug and stepped on it. The music had been paused mid-song. My living room looked like a set after the camera stopped rolling. My mom was in the kitchen, slowly collecting cups and plates. She wasn't speaking, but I could tell her brain was on overdrive. She'd aged 10 years in the last 2 hours. Her movements were slower, more careful, like she didn't want to make any more missteps. I started gathering the mess too, silently. We worked side by side for a while. She didn't say much, and neither did I. Maybe she was waiting for me, to bring it up again. Maybe I was waiting for her, but I think we both knew it would take more than a single awkward moment on the porch to unpack what had just happened. Still, there was something honest about the silence. No more pretending. No more shiny versions of my life being offered up for applause. My dad had returned to his truck at some point. He was probably sitting there, staring at the steering wheel. That was his way. Not avoidance exactly, just a deeply ingrained discomfort with conflict. He didn't know what to say. I didn't blame him. Around 10 p.m., the house was empty. Every plate had been washed. The chairs were pushed back under the table. The living room was quiet again. My mom lingered at the doorway, purse over her. shoulder, like she wanted to say something but didn't know where to begin. "I hope you know," she finally said. "We were just trying to help." I nodded, but I didn't offer much more than that. She left without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, reliving every second of that speech, every word, the look on Leo's face, the silence afterward. I hadn't planned it. It wasn't some calculated takedown. I broke, and once I started talking, I couldn't stop. I wasn't even sure if it had made a difference. The next morning, I woke up to 3 text messages and 2 missed calls. All from Jace. The texts weren't long. One just said, "Call me when you're ready." I didn't respond. Later, I got a text from someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. "Heard what happened last night. Good for you. That couldn't have been easy." Word had clearly spread. Albany isn't a big city. Gossip moves fast, especially through my mother's church circles and Jace's PR connections. I was fully expecting to be the subject of awkward brunch conversations and whispers at the grocery store. Maybe I still will be. But there was something oddly relieving about that. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't hiding anymore. Still, there was fallout to deal with. 2 days later, Jace showed up at my door. I didn't answer at first, just watched her through the front window. She stood there, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, holding what looked like a takeout bag. After 5 minutes, she knocked again, not loud, just one of those soft knocks that says, "I'll leave if you really want me to." I let her in. We sat in the kitchen. She placed the bag on the table and slid it toward me. Thai food, my favorite. "You didn't have to bring anything," I said. "I wanted to," she replied. She didn't touch her drink, didn't eat, just sat there waiting. I finally said, "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but I need you to understand that you did." "I know," she said quietly. "You didn't even check in. You just planned everything, controlled it." "I thought I was helping," she said. "I really did. You've always been the one who had it together. I didn't think you'd want to talk about what happened." I didn't, but that doesn't mean I wanted to pretend everything was fine either. She looked down. "I didn't know he was the guy who fired you," she said. I knew his name from a campaign we're working on. He was friendly, said he used to manage a team in Boston. That's all I knew. I didn't make the connection." "It's not just about him," I said. "It's about you inviting a bunch of people I didn't even know, throwing a party that wasn't really for me. It was for you to make it look like I bounced back." That hit her. She flinched a little. "I guess I needed that to be true," she admitted, "because if you could fall apart, then maybe I could too, and I don't know how to handle that." It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. We didn't solve everything that day, but we talked more honestly than we had in years. About our family, about how we both inherited our mom's obsession with appearances, about how much pressure there is to seem okay even when we're not, and how exhausting it is to carry that alone. That afternoon, I didn't forgive everything, but I started to understand it. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten from a woman I didn't recognize. She said she was at the party, a friend of a friend. She wrote, "I didn't know your story, but hearing it made me rethink some things I've been avoiding. Thank you for being brave enough to say it out loud." I read that line twice, then 3 times. Brave. It didn't feel like bravery at the time. It felt like desperation. Like I was drowning and decided I didn't care if anyone saw. But maybe it was both. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The letter stayed on my kitchen counter for days. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I read it every morning while the coffee brewed, sometimes twice. It didn't just validate what I'd said at the party. It reminded me that even in my most vulnerable moment, I had taken control of my own story, something I hadn't done in a long time. Meanwhile, things slowly settled back into a rhythm. Jace and I weren't back to normal, whatever normal was, but we were having real conversations. Not daily, but regularly. There were still moments when she tried to redirect or overcompensate with performative concern. But she was learning to just listen, to sit in discomfort without fixing it. Mom backed off. She even canceled a church brunch I was apparently supposed to be the guest of honor at. I didn't ask for details. I was just grateful for the reprieve. But there was one thread still left dangling: Leo. The man had walked into my home, into my life like nothing had happened. No apology, no recognition, no discomfort. And now, through the grapevine, specifically Jace, who finally connected the dots between her campaign and my trauma, I learned he was trying to build a local consulting brand. Apparently, he was rebranding himself as a thought leader in ethical, corporate restructuring. The irony was grotesque. First I laughed, then I felt nauseous. I wanted justice, but I didn't want to burn the world down or launch into some social media war. That wasn't my style. I'd seen too many people drown in their own anger. But I also knew something Leo didn't. Because of my initial HR case and the documents I kept before I was fired, I had proof, not just of the horror, but of the internal reports that mysteriously disappeared, emails with concerns about Kai, the senior manager I'd reported, meeting invites, follow-ups, screenshots of unanswered messages to HR. I even had audio clips from meetings where Leo all but admitted they wanted to make things easier by moving on. I had receipts. For months, I'd done nothing with them. I was too tired, too defeated, too unsure of the cost. But now, with Leo trying to build a reputation in my hometown as some sort of business ethics guru, it was too much. So I made a plan. A week later, I attended a small business networking event in Albany, one of those boutique, polished affairs held at a co-working space with exposed brick and Edison bulbs. Jace had invited me. I think out of guilt, or maybe because she wanted me to feel empowered again. I said yes, not just because I was ready, but because I knew Leo would be there, listed as a guest panelist. I dressed simply: navy slacks, cream blouse, hair pulled back, confident but forgettable. I sat in the second row during the panel. I didn't say a word, didn't roll my eyes, didn't flinch when Leo talked about prioritizing culture during transitions. I waited. After the panel, people gathered for the social mixer. I moved around, chatted with a few small business owners. Then, casually, I approached the woman running the event, a local entrepreneur who prided herself on hosting conscious capitalism discussions. I said, "Hi, I noticed Daman Roar is on your panel. Did you vet his background?" She looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" So I handed her a flash drive. Nothing dramatic. Just a small silver one in a zippered pouch. Neatly labeled. No notes, no explanations. Just years' worth of data I had carefully curated into a clean, compelling file. Internal memos, HR correspondences, audio files, performance review manipulations, even the official email where I was fired, attached to a glowing 6-month review just weeks earlier. I didn't stay to see her reaction. I left quietly, bought a croissant from the bakery across the street, and walked home. 3 days later, his name was pulled from the next 2 events he was scheduled to speak at. A week after that, Jace forwarded me an email, a vague but firm internal notice from her company cutting all ties with Roar Consulting, citing unresolved concerns regarding professional conduct. A month later, I heard through a friend that he had closed his Albany project entirely. He didn't get sued, he didn't go to jail, but he didn't get to rebrand. He didn't get to rewrite history, and he definitely didn't get to profit from it. And me? I finally started to breathe again. With some help, I rebuilt my resume. Honestly, I didn't pretend to leave Boston on good terms. I told the truth, carefully, thoughtfully. I applied only to companies that had women in leadership. I checked Glassdoor reviews. I asked questions in interviews I never would have dared to ask before. How do you handle internal complaints? What's your turnover rate in management? Eventually, I landed a job at a small but growing nonprofit in Albany, one that helps survivors of workplace discrimination navigate their rights and career options. It wasn't flashy. It didn't come with kombucha or rooftop views, but it came with peace and purpose. And I don't think I would have gotten there if I hadn't stood up in that room, in my own home, and said exactly what happened. I think about that night sometimes, not with shame, not even with anger, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I didn't need to yell, didn't need to destroy, didn't need to humiliate. I just needed to be heard, and I was.